Today, I want to talk about something we often overlook, the dangers of being too friendly. Now, don't get me wrong, kindness is a strength. Empathy is powerful. Being friendly makes the world better. But like everything else in life, too much of something, even friendliness, can become a weakness. Being too friendly can make you vulnerable. People might start taking advantage of your kindness. Your boundaries blur. Your time, energy, and even your dignity can be drained, all because you're too afraid to say no or upset someone. Kindness is one of the most valuable traits we can offer to the world. It's what allows us to build meaningful relationships, foster trust, and create a sense of community. When you are kind, people notice. It's a way of showing the best version of yourself. However, as with any virtue, it's important to understand that too much kindness can have unintended consequences. When you're constantly kind to others, always offering a smile, a helping hand, or a listening ear, people begin to expect it from you. This might seem harmless at first, but over time, your generosity can become something others take for granted. People may stop appreciating your acts of kindness, not because they are ungrateful, but because they have become accustomed to it. They begin to assume that you're always available to help, that you'll always be there to listen, or that you'll always put their needs ahead of your own. What starts as a genuine desire to help others can slowly transform into a pattern of giving without receiving. You may find yourself saying yes to everyone else's requests, even when it's inconvenient, exhausting, or when it compromises your own well-being. You start to neglect your own needs and desires because you're so focused on pleasing others. The kindness you offer others can sometimes be taken as a sign of weakness or an endless resource that will always be there, no matter how much you give. This constant giving without boundaries can also lead to resentment. When your efforts aren't recognized or reciprocated, you may feel unappreciated and frustrated. But here's the catch. You allow that dynamic to happen by being too available, by not setting clear limits on how much of yourself you're willing to give. People can only take advantage of your kindness if you let them. Being overly kind can also cloud your judgment. You might find yourself agreeing to things that you don't actually want to do, simply because you don't want to upset anyone, or because you've grown too accustomed to being a nice person. But by doing this, you are silently telling others that your needs, desires, and time don't matter as much as theirs. Over time, this can create a toxic cycle where you lose sight of who you are and what you truly want, all in the name of being the good person. The reality is, kindness doesn't have to mean saying yes to everything. In fact, true kindness is about knowing when to say no, when to protect your energy, your time, and your well-being. Saying no when it's needed doesn't make you unkind. It simply makes you respectful of yourself. It's about giving with intention, not obligation. It's about creating balance in your life so that your kindness can continue to thrive without feeling like it's being exploited or worn down. They protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being. Without boundaries, you may find yourself overwhelmed, stressed, and drained because you're constantly giving to others without considering the toll it takes on you. Unfortunately, when you are overly friendly, you often risk creating weak boundaries that leave you open to being taken advantage of. When you are too friendly, you tend to blur the lines between what is acceptable and what isn't. You might find yourself agreeing to things you don't want to do, saying yes to every request, or allowing people to invade your personal space emotionally, mentally, or even physically. You may not realize it at first, but over time, these small compromises add up. Weak boundaries are the result of never asserting your limits, and this can lead to feelings of frustration, resentment, and burnout. One of the reasons weak boundaries emerge from excessive friendliness is because of the fear of disappointing others. As a friendly person, you might go out of your way to make sure everyone around you is happy, often at the expense of your own needs. You may worry that if you say no or stand up for yourself, others will think you're rude, selfish, or unkind. This fear of rejection or conflict leads you to avoid setting boundaries altogether. And as a result, you end up feeling like you're constantly giving of yourself while receiving little in return. Additionally, when your boundaries are weak, you may unknowingly invite disrespectful behavior from others. People learn to take advantage of your kindness and start expecting things from you without considering your comfort or limits. For example, colleagues might ask for constant favors. Friends might expect you to drop everything for them at the last minute. Or acquaintances may think they can share personal details with you without regard for your emotional capacity. These situations occur because you have not communicated clear limits and allowed people to overstep. Weak boundaries also create emotional exhaustion. When you are constantly prioritizing the needs of others without considering your own, you can quickly run out of emotional resources. You may feel obligated to be there for everyone, but this can leave you emotionally depleted. Being too friendly without boundaries means you're available to everyone except yourself. This type of exhaustion isn't just physical. It seeps into your mental and emotional well-being. You might start feeling like you're living in a constant state of obligation, unable to escape the feeling that you have to please others all the time. Furthermore, weak boundaries often lead to lost opportunities for self-care and personal growth. When you're always trying to meet the needs of others, you neglect the time and energy required to focus on your own goals, aspirations, and well-being. Personal development often takes a back seat because you're too busy being there for others. Without clear boundaries, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that being overly friendly and constantly available is the key to building strong relationships. But in reality, this lack of boundaries doesn't nurture healthy, balanced connections. It creates a pattern of dependency where others rely on you too much, while you lose sight of your own needs. Having weak boundaries also impacts your self-esteem. When you allow others to overstep without saying anything, it can make you feel unimportant. You may begin to question your worth, thinking that your value is tied to how much you do for others. This undermines your confidence, making it harder to assert yourself in the future. A lack of boundaries can leave you feeling like you're at the mercy of others' demands, unable to stand up for what you truly need or want. In a world that often emphasizes the importance of being friendly and accommodating to everyone, it's crucial to remember that not everyone deserves your time, energy, or emotional investment. Being overly friendly, while it may seem harmless or even virtuous, can lead you to waste valuable resources on people who don't truly value you or have your best interests at heart. This is where discernment becomes essential. Not everyone is worthy of your energy, and recognizing this truth is a key step in protecting your mental and emotional well-being. The reality is, we are all limited in our capacity to give. Time, emotional energy, and focus are finite resources. So when you spread yourself too thin by trying to be everything to everyone, you dilute the quality of the relationships you have. You might find that you are giving your best to people who never reciprocate, leaving you feeling drained, unappreciated, and even resentful. And when you give all of your attention to those who don't value you, you're left with less to offer to those who genuinely deserve it. Your closest friends, family, and those who truly care about you. Not everyone deserves your energy because some people take and never give. There are individuals who thrive on constant attention, validation, and help, but who never offer anything in return. These relationships are one-sided, and they can be emotionally exhausting. Being too friendly can lead you to feel obligated to give and give, hoping for something in return, be it appreciation, respect, or simply acknowledgement. But when this never happens, you find yourself caught in a cycle of unbalanced relationships that deplete you without offering anything back. Furthermore, the wrong people can drain your energy and leave you feeling worse about yourself. Some individuals bring negativity, drama, or toxicity into your life. They might gossip, criticize, manipulate, or create unnecessary chaos. If you constantly give your attention to these people, you're inadvertently allowing their negative energy to infiltrate your own life. Over time, this can have a serious impact on your mental and emotional health. You might find yourself feeling anxious, stressed, or emotionally drained from being too available to people who only bring negativity. This is why it's essential to evaluate the people around you and ask yourself whether they are truly worthy of your energy. Are they adding value to your life, or are they taking away from it? Investing your time and energy in the right people is crucial for your personal growth and happiness. The people who deserve your energy are those who uplift you, support you, and respect you. These are the people who listen when you speak, who are there for you in your times of need, and who encourage you to be your best self. By focusing on these individuals, you create a positive feedback loop where both parties contribute to the relationship, leading to greater fulfillment, joy, and mutual respect. Additionally, there are those who may not be toxic, but are simply unaware of the impact their behavior has on you. These people might constantly ask for your help, attention, or time without considering whether it's an appropriate time for you, or if you even have the capacity to give. In these cases, being overly friendly can mean sacrificing your own needs for the sake of others, even when it's not truly needed or wanted. It's important to recognize that just because someone asks for your energy doesn't mean you owe it to them. Respecting your own needs means knowing when to prioritize yourself and setting the healthy boundaries that protect your peace of mind. Moreover, not everyone is deserving of your emotional energy. Emotional vampires are people who are constantly draining your emotional reserves without ever reciprocating. They might do this by dumping their problems on you, seeking sympathy, or seeking constant emotional validation without offering the same in return. Over time, these relationships can feel exhausting and one-sided. The emotional labor required to always listen, support, and console without receiving the same care in return can wear you down. Your emotional well-being matters, and you have the right to protect your emotional energy by limiting the time you spend with individuals who fail to nurture it. Lastly, being too friendly with everyone can lead to a lack of focus. When you're constantly trying to be available for everyone, you distract yourself from what truly matters in your life, your goals, your dreams, and your own well-being. The more you try to give to others, the less you have for yourself. By recognizing that not everyone deserves your energy, you allow yourself to refocus on what matters most, investing in relationships and pursuits that contribute positively to your life. People-pleasing is a behavior that many of us adopt in an effort to be liked, to avoid conflict, or to feel accepted. It's natural to want to make others happy, to fit in, and to be seen as helpful and accommodating. However, constantly striving to meet everyone else's expectations without considering your own needs or feelings can lead to burnout and deep-seated resentment. The problem with people-pleasing is that it often comes at a personal cost that you might not fully recognize until it's too late. At its core, people-pleasing involves prioritizing the needs and desires of others over your own. You say yes when you really want to say a no, agree to things that drain your energy, and constantly place others' comfort above your own. This behavior is often driven by a fear of rejection or disapproval. The thought of disappointing someone or causing conflict feels unbearable, so you overextend yourself to avoid it. You may think that by saying yes to everything, you will maintain harmony and strengthen relationships. However, this approach usually leads to the exact opposite. When you're constantly pleasing others, you are sacrificing your own well-being. You're essentially running on empty, offering your time, energy, and resources without replenishing them. Over time, this depletion can lead to both physical and emotional exhaustion. You may find yourself feeling mentally drained, overwhelmed, and unable to keep up with the demands placed on you. It's as though you're giving from a well that has run dry, yet you keep pouring more and more, hoping that there's still something left. But eventually, that well of energy and patience runs out. The more you neglect your own needs, the harder it becomes to keep up the act of being the ever-available, accommodating person that others expect. This ongoing cycle of people-pleasing often results in resentment. At first, you might feel good about helping others, about being their go-to person or the one who always says yes. But as the demands increase and your energy decreases, you begin to feel trapped in a pattern that feels one-sided. You might start resenting the very people you've been trying to please because their expectations have become overwhelming. They may not even be aware of how much you're sacrificing, yet they continue to ask for more. Meanwhile, you feel like you have no way out because you've been conditioned to believe that saying a no or setting limits is rude or selfish. The truth is, people-pleasing is not sustainable. When you're always trying to make others happy, you lose sight of your own happiness and goals. You become so consumed by fulfilling other people's desires that you forget to take care of yourself. As a result, you might end up neglecting your own personal goals, dreams, and needs. You might postpone things that bring you joy or fulfillment, all in the name of keeping others satisfied. But over time, this will catch up with you. You may start to feel lost or disconnected from who you truly are, as you've spent so much time bending to the will of others. Additionally, people-pleasing leads to a lack of personal boundaries. When you're constantly saying yes, you create a pattern where others feel entitled to your time and energy. This can lead to an unhealthy dynamic in relationships where your boundaries are disregarded and your own needs are constantly pushed aside. The more you give without limits, the more people may come to expect it from you. In some cases, they may even take advantage of your willingness to help without recognizing that you are pushing yourself to your limits. Over time, this can create an imbalance where your self-respect and personal boundaries are compromised in the name of pleasing others. Another harmful consequence of people-pleasing is that it often fosters superficial relationships. Sure, when you're always trying to please someone, you're not truly showing up as your authentic self. Instead, you're presenting a version of yourself that aligns with what you believe others want or expect from you. This means you might suppress your true thoughts, feelings, and desires, all in an effort to maintain peace or avoid conflict. While you might build a facade of friendship or camaraderie, these relationships lack depth because they are built on a foundation of inauthenticity. When you're not being true to yourself, the connections you make with others are often shallow and unfulfilling. People-pleasing can also have a damaging impact on your self-esteem. When your worth is tied to how much you do for others, you start to lose sight of your inherent value. You may feel that you're only valuable if you're meeting the needs of others, which leads to a constant cycle of overgiving and self-sacrifice. This can leave you feeling unappreciated, overlooked, and eventually invisible. The more you give without receiving, the more you start to feel like you are worth less. This erosion of self-worth can impact many areas of your life, from your professional life to your personal relationships, and can even lead to feelings of guilt when you attempt to take time for yourself. It also encourages you to trust your own instincts and not be swayed by external pressures or expectations. Saying no can also prevent you from being manipulated or exploited. People who are used to hearing yes all the time may begin to take advantage of your kindness or willingness to please. They may continually push their needs and demands onto you, knowing that you'll comply. By learning to say a no assertively, you establish a clear boundary that signals to others that you are not willing to be exploited or controlled. Saying a no when needed helps you protect yourself from being manipulated by others who may take advantage of your unwillingness to set limits. Furthermore, saying a no is necessary for avoiding burnout. It's easy to feel like you need to do everything for everyone, especially if you are someone who enjoys helping others. However, constantly saying yes without considering the consequences can quickly lead to burnout, both physically and mentally. Burnout is a state of chronic exhaustion that results from prolonged stress, lack of rest, and an imbalance between your personal and professional life. By saying no when necessary, you give yourself permission to rest, recharge, and maintain balance. It allows you to step back and assess what you can handle, ensuring that you're not pushing yourself beyond your limits. Self-respect is one of the most important aspects of maintaining a healthy sense of identity and personal integrity. It's the internal recognition of your own worth and the boundaries you set for how others should treat you. Without self-respect, it becomes easy to compromise your values, beliefs, and needs in order to gain approval from others. When you're overly friendly, always eager to please, or constantly putting others' needs ahead of your own, you may unknowingly allow yourself to be treated in ways that diminish your self-respect. This can lead to a slow erosion of your sense of self-worth as you continuously sacrifice your dignity and desires for the sake of maintaining harmony or gaining external validation. One of the main ways that excessive friendliness impacts self-respect is by causing you to neglect your own needs and desires. When you're overly focused on being accommodating and agreeable, it becomes easy to dismiss your own feelings and needs in favor of others. You might find yourself saying yes to things that don't align with your own values, interests, or even comfort levels, simply because you want to avoid conflict or be liked. This can create a pattern where your needs are always pushed aside in favor of what others want. The more you neglect your own wants, the more you lose touch with your sense of self and what truly matters to you. Over time, this leads to feelings of frustration, confusion, and resentment as you realize that you're not living authentically or honoring your own values. Additionally, being too friendly without clear boundaries can lead to situations where you're treated poorly or taken advantage of. People who know that you're always willing to please might begin to expect more and more from you, without regard for your comfort or well-being. They may start to take advantage of your kindness, knowing that you'll never say a no, even if it means asking for unreasonable favors or making demands that infringe upon your time and energy. When you allow people to overstep your boundaries without challenge, it's a reflection of how little respect you have for yourself. You may justify this behavior by thinking that being liked or needed by others is more important than asserting your limits. However, the truth is that people will treat you the way you allow them to treat you. If you don't stand up for yourself, others will likely follow suit and not recognize or respect your worth. Being overly friendly can also cause you to suppress your authentic self. The desire to be liked or to avoid confrontation often leads to adopting a version of yourself that you think others will find more acceptable or pleasant. You may start to mold your behavior, opinions, and actions based on what you believe will make others happy, rather than what is true to your own character. This type of self-suppression is a form of self-betrayal. You're choosing to hide parts of yourself or adapt to other people's expectations instead of embracing and expressing who you truly are. In doing so, you disconnect from your own authenticity and your self-respect diminishes. Over time, this inauthentic way of being can leave you feeling lost, unfulfilled, and disconnected from your own sense of worth. Furthermore, an overemphasis on being friendly at all costs can lead to a loss of personal power. When you constantly seek the approval of others, you allow them to dictate the terms of your relationships and interactions. You become more focused on pleasing others than on asserting your own needs or desires. This can be a silent form of giving away your power, as you're no longer acting in alignment with your values or in control of the way you're treated. Instead, you're giving others the power to determine your emotional state, your actions, and even your sense of self-worth. The more you do this, the more you chip away at your own ability to assert yourself and honor your own desires, resulting in a lack of self-respect. Self-respect requires standing firm in your beliefs and boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable. When you're overly friendly, it's easy to blur these boundaries in an attempt to avoid conflict or keep the peace. You might agree to things you don't actually want to do or allow people to treat you in ways that aren't respectful, simply to avoid rocking the boat. But true self-respect comes from understanding that your worth is not dependent on other people's approval or how much you can do for them. It's about having the courage to say a no when something doesn't feel right and being willing to put yourself first when necessary. Without this internal strength, you can easily lose sight of your own value and begin to feel like you're not worthy of respect or consideration. Lastly, being too friendly often causes you to lose sight of your personal boundaries. Boundaries are essential for maintaining your self-respect. They define who you are, what you're willing to accept, and what you're not. Without clear boundaries, you are essentially allowing others to dictate how you should feel, act, and respond in any given situation. People will sense that you have no boundaries, and they will continually test your limits, often pushing you to accommodate their needs at the expense of your own. This constant bending to others will lead to a loss of your own identity. When you allow others to walk all over you or constantly expect more than you're willing to give, you're undermining your own sense of self-respect. The only way to protect your dignity and self-worth is by setting and maintaining strong personal boundaries. In both personal and professional settings, it's important to maintain a certain level of distinction between the roles you play and the relationships you engage in. Being friendly and approachable is often encouraged and is generally seen as a positive trait. However, when friendliness crosses into excessive or unbalanced behavior, it can blur the lines between personal and professional relationships, leading to complications that can affect both your work and personal life. In a professional environment, maintaining a certain level of professionalism is essential for maintaining respect and authority. Over-friendliness with colleagues or superiors can lead to a situation where your role is no longer clearly defined. For example, if you are overly friendly with your coworkers, constantly engaging in casual social interactions, it can be challenging for them to see you as someone who should be taken seriously or someone who commands authority. When the boundaries between colleagues and friends become unclear, you might struggle to draw the line between collaboration and personal favoritism, which can impact your career advancement or professional reputation. Additionally, over-friendliness in a professional setting can lead to situations where personal issues begin to spill over into the workplace. When you become too friendly with coworkers, it can blur the line between work-related conversations and personal matters. While it's important to build rapport and get along with your colleagues, constantly discussing personal issues, sharing intimate details, or spending excessive time together outside of work can make others feel uncomfortable or create a sense of unprofessionalism. It can also lead to gossiping or drama, which can detract from the focus and productivity required in a professional setting. Moreover, when you become overly friendly with someone in a professional context, it can lead to a lack of boundaries. You might find it difficult to say no to requests or set appropriate limits, which can result in an imbalance of expectation. For example, if a colleague knows you as a friendly, helpful person who never refuses a favor, they might begin to take advantage of that by continuously asking for favors, whether it's additional work, help with personal matters, or even emotional support during work hours. This can place unnecessary pressure on you and result in feelings of burnout or resentment. The more you give, the more others may expect from you, and soon you find yourself overwhelmed by requests that blur the line between work and personal obligation. Another complication arises in the context of leadership or supervisory roles. As a leader or manager, being friendly with your team is important for building trust and rapport. However, over-friendliness with employees can complicate your ability to lead effectively. If you are too friendly, it might undermine your authority, making it harder for employees to take you seriously or respect your decision. It can also create confusion regarding the expectations of the role, as employees may struggle to differentiate between a leader who is there to guide and someone who is just a peer. Furthermore, excessive friendliness may lead to favoritism, whether intentional or not. If certain employees perceive that you're closer to some colleagues than others, it can create divisions within the team, causing jealousy or resentment. Maintaining a healthy distance while still being approachable is key to ensuring a balanced and professional atmosphere. On the flip side, the same principle applies to personal relationships. Over-friendliness with acquaintances or even close friends can also lead to blurred boundaries. For instance, if you are constantly giving, accommodating, and never saying a no to friends or loved ones, it can create an imbalance in the relationship. Over time, your actions might be taken for granted, leading others to expect more from you without reciprocating. The result can be feelings of exploitation and resentment, especially if your generosity or kindness is not acknowledged. Over-friendliness can also create situations where you feel obligated to maintain a certain role or behavior just to fit into a specific social dynamic. If you are constantly the one to plan events, reach out, or accommodate other schedules, you may feel like your needs are always secondary, which can lead to emotional exhaustion. Additionally, over-friendliness in personal relationships can make it harder to express your true feelings or assert your boundaries. In any healthy relationship, whether it's with family, friends, or a romantic partner, open communication is vital. However, if you've become so accustomed to being overly friendly and accommodating, you may find it difficult to speak up when something bothers you. You might suppress your own emotions or opinions to avoid conflict, which can slowly lead to feelings of frustration or dissatisfaction. This can also create an environment where your relationships are based more on pleasing others than on mutual understanding and respect. Romantic relationships can be particularly susceptible to this blurring of boundaries. Over-friendliness with a partner where you're constantly striving to be the perfect or most accommodating partner can create unrealistic expectations. If you're always focused on meeting their needs and desires, it can undermine the natural balance of give and take that is crucial for a healthy relationship. In some cases, one partner may begin to take advantage of the other's kindness, leading to an unbalanced dynamic where one person is constantly giving and the other is consistently receiving. This can result in resentment and dissatisfaction as both parties begin to feel that their needs are not equally met. In all cases, the key to maintaining healthy, respectful relationships, whether personal or professional, is recognizing and respecting the boundaries that need to be in place. When you are overly friendly, these boundaries can become unclear, leading to misunderstandings, unbalanced expectations, and emotional exhaustion. Establishing and maintaining clear boundaries is essential for ensuring that both parties in any relationship feel valued, respected, and understood. Personal growth and development are essential aspects of leading a fulfilling and successful life. This process involves pushing yourself outside of your comfort zones, challenging your limitations, and constantly striving to improve in different areas of your life, whether it's emotionally, intellectually, or professionally. However, over-friendliness, especially when it involves constantly seeking validation from others or putting others' needs before your own, can significantly hinder this process. When you are overly concerned with being liked or making everyone around you happy, you often lose sight of your own personal goals and growth. Instead of focusing on your own self-improvement and pushing your boundaries, you end up focusing on pleasing others, which ultimately leaves little room for your own development. One of the primary ways over-friendliness interferes with personal growth is by preventing you from setting clear boundaries. Boundaries are crucial for personal development because they allow you to safeguard your time, energy, and focus. Without boundaries, you are constantly at the mercy of others' demands, and this prevents you from having the space to work on your own goals and aspirations. For example, if you're always saying yes to others, whether it's to help with their projects, attend events that don't align with your interests, or offer emotional support when you're already overwhelmed, you're not allowing yourself the time you need to grow in the areas that matter most to you. This can result in a lack of time management and disorganization as your priorities get lost in a sea of others' needs. Furthermore, when you prioritize others over yourself, you may begin to fall into the trap of self-neglect. The more you focus on being overly friendly and accommodating, the more you might neglect your own desires, health, and ambitions. Personal growth requires a deep sense of self-awareness and the ability to recognize when it's time to focus on your own needs. If you're constantly putting others first, you may ignore signals that tell you it's time to invest in yourself, whether it's setting time aside for rest, pursuing a new skill, or taking time to reflect on your own emotional or mental health. This neglect can lead to stagnation, and over time, you might find that you've drifted further away from your own goals and values. In addition, over-friendliness can also lead to people-pleasing tendencies that prevent you from being true to yourself. When you constantly adjust your behavior to fit what others expect or want from you, you lose touch with your authentic self. Personal growth involves stepping into your authentic identity, which requires the courage to be vulnerable, to express your true thoughts and feelings, and to make decisions that align with your values, even when they might not please everyone around you. However, when you're overly friendly, you might suppress your true desires or opinions in order to avoid conflict or maintain external approval. This inauthenticity can make you feel disconnected from your true self, preventing you from realizing your full potential. Moreover, being overly friendly can lead to a situation where you're so concerned with external validation that you lose sight of your internal sense of fulfillment. Personal growth is not about constantly seeking approval from others. It's about cultivating self-confidence and self-worth that come from within. However, when you are overly friendly and dependent on the approval of others, you may find yourself continuously seeking external praise or recognition. This leads to a cycle of dependency, where your sense of achievement is always tied to others' opinions, rather than your own internal sense of accomplishment. As a result, you may feel unfulfilled or insecure, as you're constantly chasing validation from people who may not have your best interests at heart, or who might not understand the true nature of your goals. This focus on others can also affect your decision-making process. In life, making decisions that align with your values, purpose, and personal development goals often requires saying no to things or people that aren't in alignment with your growth. When you're overly friendly, You may find it hard to make tough choices that are necessary for your development, simply because you don't want to upset or disappoint others. This reluctance to make difficult decisions can keep you from pursuing opportunities that could challenge and expand your horizons. You may choose the path of least resistance, avoiding challenging situations because you're afraid they might cause discomfort or conflict. This can be particularly limiting in both your personal and professional life, as growth often happens when you're willing to take risks, face discomfort, and venture into new, unfamiliar territory. Over-friendliness can also prevent you from developing your resilience. Personal growth often requires the ability to face challenges, overcome obstacles, and bounce back from setbacks. When you're constantly trying to keep everyone happy, you may avoid confrontation or difficult conversations, even when they are necessary for your personal growth. You may fail to speak up for yourself when your boundaries are crossed, or when you're asked to do something that goes against your values. As a result, you miss out on opportunities to develop your assertiveness and problem-solving skills, both of which are critical for personal and professional development. Resilience isn't just about surviving tough situations. It's about learning from them and using those experiences to become stronger and more self-assured. Finally, an over-focus on being friendly and accommodating can prevent you from cultivating a growth mindset. The belief that you can continuously improve and develop your skills, intelligence, and abilities. When you're constantly pleasing others and seeking external validation, you may limit your own learning by failing to challenge yourself or embrace opportunities for growth. A growth mindset requires an openness to feedback, the ability to embrace failure as part of the learning process, and the willingness to step out of your comfort zone. Over-friendliness can limit your exposure to these growth opportunities because you are too focused on keeping everyone around you comfortable rather than taking bold steps toward your own development. One of the most significant consequences of being overly friendly is the creation of false expectations among those around you. People often expect others to act in a certain way based on their behavior. And when you consistently display excessive friendliness, people might begin to expect you to always be available, accommodating, and willing to help. While kindness and a positive attitude are valuable, when this friendliness becomes too ingrained or excessive, it can distort others' perceptions of what is realistic or reasonable in the relationship. This can lead to several issues, including unrealistic demands, feelings of entitlement, and a lack of mutual understanding. First and foremost, excessive friendliness often leads to unrealistic expectations regarding your time and availability. If you're the type of person who constantly says yes to requests, always helps with every task, or frequently goes out of your way to please others, people will begin to assume that you are always available. They may expect you to drop everything at a moment's notice to assist them with their needs. Over time, this builds a perception that you are always ready to help, no matter how inconvenient the request may be for you. This can lead to an imbalanced dynamic where others' needs consistently take priority over your own. It's important to realize that when you continuously meet others' demands without considering your own limitations, you send a message that you can be relied on for everything, no matter how large or small the request. This creates a false sense of security for others, making them believe that they can count on you for anything at any time. Additionally, over-friendliness can create a sense of entitlement in others. When you constantly go out of your way to accommodate people, they may begin to feel like they have a right to your time, energy, and resources. This shift from gratitude to entitlement can be subtle, but it can have long-term consequences on your relationships. People may start to take your kindness for granted, assuming that you will always put their needs first without question. As a result, they might stop appreciating the effort you put into helping them and instead start expecting it as a given. The more you cater to this sense of entitlement, the harder it becomes to establish clear boundaries or shift the dynamic without facing resistance or conflict. Moreover, over-friendliness can blur the line between appropriate and inappropriate requests. When you're overly friendly and constantly saying yes to everyone, it can lead to situations where people begin to ask for favors that go beyond what is reasonable or healthy. For example, a colleague might repeatedly ask you to help them with their work. A friend might start to expect you to attend every event, or even a family member might rely on you to solve all their problems. The more you enable these behaviors by consistently meeting demands without hesitation, the more others may start to believe that these types of requests are not only acceptable, but also expected of you. You might find yourself in a situation where you're constantly trying to please others, but at the cost of your own well-being, time, or priorities. This creates a cycle of dependence, where people rely on you to fulfill their needs without ever considering how their actions affect you. Additionally, over-friendliness can lead to misaligned expectations in your personal or professional life. In personal relationships, when you're constantly acting friendly and accommodating, your actions may inadvertently lead others to believe that you are always available for emotional support, social gatherings, or acts of service. This can be draining as it leaves little room for your own emotional needs or boundaries. In the workplace, being overly friendly may cause coworkers or superiors to have unrealistic expectations of your role. They may assume that you will handle all of the extra tasks, take on additional responsibilities, or be the person who always solves problems without ever considering whether it's fair to you. This can create an environment where you feel undervalued, overwhelmed, and taken for granted. The expectations placed on you might gradually escalate, and if you continue to meet them without setting clear boundaries, it can become a burden that negatively impacts your productivity, motivation, and overall well-being. When false expectations build up over time, it can lead to significant disappointment, both for you and for those around you. If you ever find it difficult to meet the constant demands or begin to assert your boundaries, others may feel hurt or confused by your shift in behavior. They might interpret your change as a sign that you no longer care about the relationship or that you are being difficult. On the flip side, if you consistently meet others' false expectations without question, you might find yourself burned out or resentful as your needs are continually sacrificed. This creates a tension where both parties may feel dissatisfied, but neither fully understands the root cause of the problem. Your actions of being overly friendly, without the clarity of boundaries, can cause misunderstandings that damage relationships and lead to frustration on both sides. In some cases, over-friendliness can also lead to manipulative dynamics where others start to take advantage of the false expectations you've set. People who are aware that you rarely say a no, or that you often put others' needs above your own might begin to exploit this. They might ask for favors, emotional support, or time, knowing that you will comply, but they do so without genuinely caring about your limitations or needs. This manipulation can happen subtly, and over time, it can weigh you down as you feel obligated to meet their needs without receiving any reciprocal support or understanding. Another issue is that when false expectations become ingrained in a relationship, it can become incredibly difficult to change the dynamic. If you've set a pattern of always being accommodating, others might view any attempt to create boundaries as a sudden change in behavior that disrupts the balance. They may resist or feel offended by your need to prioritize yourself, which can lead to tension and conflict. In many cases, this resistance is rooted in their own entitlement to your time and energy, which has been built up over time due to your over-friendliness. The longer you go without addressing these false expectations, the more challenging it becomes to shift the balance and reclaim your own needs.